It's that time of year again. Time to dress up like pirates and get wasted while walking up and down Bayshore Boulevard. Or at least, it was yesterday. The reason I didn't post this yesterday was, well, I was there. Now, let's sing our best yo-ho and dive off the plank into the story behind the wildest party in Tampa Bay. There are many versions of Jose Gaspar's life, with many agreeing he was born in Spain likely in the 1750s. It is disagreed about what he did in his early career, however. One story goes that he was living in poverty when he kidnapped a young woman to ransom her. He was caught and given the choice between the Navy or prison. Gaspar chose the Navy, where he eventually led a mutiny, capturing the ship. The other two are very similar, with both agreeing that he was a nobleman of high rank in the Navy, but disagreeing about whether Gaspar stole the crown jewels or was merely framed by a jaded lover. In all accounts, Gaspar named his ship the Floridablanca, or loosely White Flower. Gaspar and his crew traveled to La Florida, where they settled along the southwestern coast, which by this point was nearly uninhabited. The crew built their base on an island, which is aptly called Gasparilla Island, which Gaspar began calling himself. They also used Captiva Island as a place to hold prisoners, mostly women, as men were either put to death or forced to join Gaspar's crew. These women were either ransomed or forced to serve as wives for the crew, with all that entails. One story about Gaspar tells of a Spanish princess named Josepa who was captured by Gaspar. The princess rejected Gaspar's advances and he killed her in a rage, or because his crew called for her death depending on the story. Gaspar immediately regretted his actions and took her to a nearby island where he buried her and named it Josepa Island. Similarly, Sanibel Island is supposedly named by Gaspar's first mate, Rodrigo Lopez, who had named the island after his love he had left in Spain. Gaspar eventually allowed him to return home. Most versions of the story agree that Jose Gaspar died around 1821, soon after the United States gained control of Florida. Gaspar had decided to retire, being in his 60s, and his men gathered on Gasparilla Island to divide the money they gathered over 4 decades of piracy. Some versions of the story valued his wealth at $30 million, which Spain just sold Florida to the US for $5 million, so Gaspar had enough money to buy 6 Floridas. During the distribution of wealth, a watchman spotted what looked to him like a British merchant ship. Gaspar and his crew decided to take one more prize and sailed out on the Floridablanca to take the vessel. When the pirates fired a warning shot, the quote merchant ship raised an American flag, revealing itself to be the pirate hunting schooner USS Enterprise. A large battle began where the Floridablanca began to sink. By most accounts, Gaspar tied an anchor around his waist and jumped into the water, shouting, "Gasparilla dies by his own hand, not by the enemy's." Sorry to be a buzzkill, but there is no historical evidence that any of this actually happened, and the story of Jose Gaspar has been bound into folklore and legend. The first written account of Jose Gaspar comes from an early 1900s brochure for the Gasparilla Inn in the tourist town of Boca Grande on Gasparilla Island, which reported to take its story from a man named Juan Gomez, who was rumored to have been a member of Gaspar's crew due to his uncertain past and old age. In 1923, Boston historian Francis Bradley obtained a Gasparilla Inn brochure and, assuming it was real, included the story in his book, Piracy in the West Indies and its Suppression. However, none of this was true, with the brochure's author, Pat Lemoyne, admitting in 1949 that the story was a quote cockeyed lie without a true fact in it, saying he wrote it in a dramatic style that, quote, tourists like to hear. Now let's jump back to the year 1904 in the growing city of Tampa, which had been founded as a settlement around U.S. Army Post Fort Brooke and expanded rapidly due to the cigar and shipping industries. It is May, and a group of local businessmen decided to combine New Orleans Mardi Gras with a pirate theme inspired by the Gaspar legend to liven up the May Day festivities. The men dressed up as pirates and rode horses through town, calling on the startled onlookers to join them on a parade to the May Day festival. The second Gasparilla was not a surprise like the first, however, and several car manufacturers joined the parade. The parade did not happen from 1906 to 1913, but began again to celebrate the Panama Canal. It has happened every year since. The legend of Jose Gaspar is very interesting, but let's agree that if he were real, he would have been a terrible person. But what do you expect with pirates? Every year, the legend comes to life in the city of Tampa, so why don't you find your best pirate costume and plan a trip for next year's festivities? Thanks for watching.